Hi, I'm Ameera Khalid, and I'm the creator and host of the Powerful Podcast series, produced in collaboration with the Canadian Business Council Dubai. On the Powerful Podcast series, I will be interviewing a diverse group of Canadians and have thoughtful discussions that I hope will resonate with other Canadians in the region and across the globe. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. I hope you enjoy listening to the Powerful Podcast series. And if you do, please subscribe to the Canadian Business Council Dubai's channel on YouTube. You can also follow the podcast on the Canadian Business Council's social media on LinkedIn and Instagram. My guest today is Michael Rigby. Mike has been working and living away from his native UK for over 15 years in a variety of locations. Initially at WhiteWater, Mike started managing the Park Attractions division in their European office before relocating to the UAE to build up their fourth regional office in his capacity as Regional Vice President for the Middle East and India. Now the company's GM and RVP for the Middle East and India, Mike has worked with several of the world's leading water parks such as Atlantis and Yas Water World, whilst also focusing heavily on greenfield development projects including Selva Mountain Resort in Qatar, Shanku's Waterworld Resort in India, and the highly anticipated Marial project with Katifan Projects in Qatar. Thank you so much for being on the show, Mike. It's a pleasure having you. My first question is, Mike, you've traveled the world before setting roots down in the UAE. Can you tell us the backstory about what brought you to the Middle East?
Yeah, sure. So, as you can probably tell by the accent, I'm British by birth and spent most of my youth in the UK, but always had an ambition to travel and to see as much of the world as possible. And I think after university, I took a chance and, I accepted a role actually in Mexico at the time. So that was my first foray into the international world, should we say. That was then followed by trying to settle down in the UK before deciding I didn't like the weather and it was cold, it was wet, and there were far nicer places, in my opinion, to be. So I relocated to Barcelona. Where I had a series of roles, always looking in the international business sphere. And that's actually where I started with WhiteWater. And, we'd had a lot of success in the Middle East over the years, having been the company to have worked a lot on Wild Wadi, Yas Waterworld, Atlantis. And it was actually in about 2013 when Dubai Parks and Resorts started that we were working on a lot of the initial concepts for Legoland, for Motion Gate. And we started to realize there was a need for more of a presence in the UAE to try and oversee those projects, ensure successful completion. So it was about 2014 that I finally agreed to move over to the UAE. We worked heavily on the Dubai Parks project, Warner Brothers at the time we were involved with, and really the rest is history. So 8 years later, I'm still here working on all these exciting projects, but I can always put it down to Dubai Parks and Resorts. That was the culprit.
Mike, so what is WhiteWater's story?
So WhiteWater, in a very quick summary, is the world's largest designer and manufacturer of water parks. In terms of the company, it's got quite an interesting history, actually. So our founder was a gentleman called Jeff Chutter, and back in about 1980, he actually owned his own sort of small park, and he was looking where he could buy some water slides. He'd seen some in the US. Really, the water park industry goes back to the mid-70s with a guy called George Millay from Wet n Wild in Orlando. So our CEO, Jeff, he'd seen these slides and he thought they'd go quite nicely in one of my resorts. And he just built them himself because he couldn't find anyone else to do it for him. And gradually, some of his neighbors sort of saw what he was doing and started to ask him, well, where did they come from? How do we buy some of those? And over time, he started to manufacture for people in the neighboring British Columbia area until eventually he sort of said, there's actually probably more money in manufacturing these water slides than running a resort. He then decided to set up a factory. They started selling internationally in the 80s. And, it's just grown from strength to strength since then. So we now have offices across the world, more than 500 employees. Jeff is still our CEO to this day. His son is involved in the business now. So it still is a family-run business. But I like to say it's one of the success stories of Canadian exports in the sense that it is the global leader in what it is. It works pretty much in every country across the globe. And even though we're not a B2C company, almost every single one of us at some point in time has probably tried one of these products.
As GM and RVP at WhiteWater West, Mike, what does a typical day look like for you?
I wish there was such a thing as a typical day. Really, two days are never the same. However, I think that's one of the things that makes it so exciting. I think that starts from the fact that as a company, we have such a broad portfolio of products, and that's from a small 100 square meter splash pad to a 200,000 square meter water park. In addition to solely water park equipment, WhiteWater also owns a variety of companies from surf. So many people have seen a flow rider that was acquired by WhiteWater. We've more recently gone into the competition inland surf with a product called Endless Surf. We provide theme park rides. So if you have ever seen a log flume or a shoot the chute, there is a good chance that comes from WhiteWater. And even a RFID technology called Vantage, which is all about guest experience, guest tracking, and creating seamless experiences across parks. So we have such a broad range of portfolios, and then even the geographies. So from our Middle East office, we're looking after the entire Middle East and even South Asia, and that includes Bangladesh, India, and Pakistan. And believe it or not, these places they're thriving. We're currently in the process of delivering a large project in Bangladesh. I myself was in India last week, where we just built India's largest park in Ahmedabad. So it goes across such a range of geographies, such a range of products, and then also such a range of different types of projects. So it can be working with a client looking how to increase the attractiveness of an existing property, such as a hotel or resort. It could be a community here in Dubai. How do we make that more attractive than the neighboring community? It could be adding to an existing park, seeing what's new, what's the latest, what we can do to differentiate it, to really starting at a very pie in the sky thinking where a client comes to us and saying, I have some land, I'm thinking about building a water park, help us. And then our role very much involves working with that client from the very start, looking at their feasibility, looking at their concepts, looking at their ideas, and pretty much trying to turn their vision into a reality that is successful and is financially viable. So amongst all that, my day can vary from putting my swimming trunks on and going to a water park to getting on an aeroplane to visit a client in Saudi Arabia to the day, to do some boring admin, or alternatively, working on the phone and Zoom calls, trying to come up with ideas, trying to come up with what's new, creative thinking. So it's super interesting, and it's a joy.
Mike, can you tell us a little bit about what you like most about what you do?
So I travel the world and I look for fun things. One of the beautiful perks of our company, and I think this is how many other companies can offer something even on a par with this, we can expense the visit to any water park in the world. So not only are we allowed to go to a water park on a day off, we are actually actively encouraged to go and explore. So I certainly think that is the enjoyable part, is we're doing things that other people are paying for, and ultimately we're getting paid to do that. But then it's also managing some of the things that I thoroughly enjoy. So there is a creative element. When someone's coming up with an idea and you're trying to think what's new, you're trying to think of something different, you're trying to think of something that's going to wow people and put smiles on their faces, that's a pretty nice feeling. And my background as well is pretty stats and maths backed. So I actually enjoy the numbers behind it, believe it or not. So it's crunching the numbers. It's, instead of working with creative guys, working with the CFO as well to say, this is why this project makes sense. This is the potential that we can bring, because it's a very lucrative business as well. I think the beauty of what we do is the whole industry was based in North America, where the weather is not as nice as it is here. So they would work on a 100-day season. The whole business case is on a 100-day season. We've got a 300-day season. Some people argue 365. However, There is absolutely no chance I'm getting in the water in January or February, but other people do, it seems. So there are so many parts of the role that are thoroughly enjoyable, and in the end, we're just doing things that make people smile, and that's not just my job, but that's the entire amusement industry. Our entire job is to make people have fun.
Mike, how would you describe the attractions market, specifically water parks in the Middle East right now, post the COVID-19 pandemic?
We're very fortunate in the Middle East that we have many of the best parks in the world. Wild Wadi, when it opened in the late 90s, was a trailblazer of its time, and it's still got such a great legacy across the Middle East. Since then, there's been so many great, fantastic projects that have opened, from Yas Waterworld, Atlantis. These are amongst the best water parks anywhere in the world. Dubai Parks, IMG, maybe that's not water park based, but theme park, Ferrari World, Warner Brothers. We're in such a fortunate position in the Middle East, and we're spoiled for choice. And all of these parks are trying to improve the situation, are trying to do something different. They're trying to really create a unique experience. So, we're very fortunate to have so much on our doorstep. And then when we focus on the post COVID-19, it's an industry that was hit so hard. We want to bring people together, we want crowds. So COVID-19 was not ideal for that. We want travel, we want tourism. However, there has been a very strong rebound. I think anyone who is based in the UAE and the Middle East will see that the place is thriving right now. It's busy, there's people coming in, the hotels are doing well, the shopping malls are full, people are getting outside again, and we're seeing exactly the same in the water parks. Many of our clients are having fantastic years, they're seeing great numbers, they're seeing people coming back, people want to get together again. So fingers crossed, it's all looking super positive, and hopefully that means they will go bigger and better.
Mike, what will the next few years bring for the attractions and entertainment sector in the Middle East and beyond?
Oh, bigger and better, I hope. And we're certainly trying to push on that. It's a competitive market. I think any of our clients would say the same. There is a huge amount of supply, there is a huge amount of demand. It is up to all of us to try and increase the size of that pie. I think often people are so scared about the competition, and especially when they see all these new projects coming up. However, if we can increase overall mindset that people want leisure, people want to go to these parks, then there is the opportunity for a win-win. So we're certainly going to see an increase in competition domestically, but then that also goes across borders. I look at the UAE, it's been leading the way in terms of tourism in the Middle East. However, the neighboring countries are now looking to catch up. So we're involved in some fantastic projects in Kuwait, in Qatar, in Saudi Arabia. And that's where the barriers are just being pushed higher and higher. The competition is just making everyone else improve. And that's ultimately, it's good for everyone, because we are seeing that the quality just continues to blow people's minds. You sort of see all these new projects that are coming in the entertainment space, and people are constantly looking for what's next, what's new. So I think we are just going to continue to see more and more investment in this space. We're going to see things that are going to be more unique, more differentiated, and we're going to see growth. And that's great from every angle. It's great from a consumer perspective because there's more for them to do. It's great from our perspective because there's more clients, and it's great from a client perspective because they're seeing the footfall, and ultimately that helps with the economy and grows it as a whole, the tourism sector.
Mike, speaking about growth, the Canadian Business Council is such a great support system for all the Canadians in the region. What does CBC Dubai mean to WhiteWater?
The support we've always received from the Canadian government, the Trade Council, the CBC has always been fantastic. And that can be on so many fronts, and be that advocating for WhiteWater for our clients, it can be promoting us to fellow companies, or even just the networking opportunities that brings. I think when you look within the CBC, there are so many fantastic Canadian companies, and luckily enough we work with a lot of these prior to even being involved. So the fact that CBC can bring together so many players where the synergies exist and business opportunities exist, hopefully allow us all to benefit from these relationships. And then with the support of the Canadian government as well, to know that there's the trust, and you've got all these leading Canadian companies that are showing the global markets that there is so much Canada has to offer. The support is above all what's been the most appreciated.
Mike, what excites you most about 2022 or the next chapter for WhiteWater West? Are there any specific projects that you're looking forward to?
I definitely say what most excites me about 2022 is England going to win the World Cup in Qatar. Unfortunately, I can't see it happening. I probably actually think Canada has just as much chance. So I will look forward to getting over and seeing Canada in some of their games. On a serious note, I will revert to Qatar because we have a world record breaking project that is being in construction right now with the World Cup in mind. And to put this in perspective, this has an 80-meter tall tower. So that's double the size of anything currently in the Middle East, and it's going to be incredible. I always am just amazed when I see it. You think of mega structures from the National Geographic, and this is one of those projects that should be on there. It's already, the client especially has been in contact with Guinness about trying to break multiple world records. So that, for me, is one of the most exciting entertainment destinations that has been done in recent years. We're fortunate enough to be supplying all the attractions for that, and can't wait for that to open. But aside from that, there is so much to look forward to. The Middle East as a whole is having a resurgence. The UAE is booming, and there's different markets as well. One of our most recent projects in the UAE was Jungle Bay at the West Ameera Khalid, which just gave a lot more amenities for the hotel. And I think that sort of trend is going to continue to grow, where different resorts are trying to offer more to their guests. They're trying to differentiate themselves. And then, of course, Saudi Arabia. It's with Vision 2030, it's super exciting. Tourism, leisure, and believe it or not, water parks are at the very top of their priorities on how to change the perception of Saudi Arabia. So we are already super active in that region. And I think across the UAE, the GCC, and Saudi Arabia, we've got so many exciting things to look forward to. So exciting times ahead. We are growing. We've just moved into a new office, and fingers crossed it's going to be a successful few years ahead.
Thank you so much for being on the show, Mike. It was an absolute pleasure.
Perfect. Thank you ever so much.